Even little children understand the concept of justice. If you've spent any time with kids, you've probably heard at some point the phrase, "That's not fair," or "It's not fair." From a young age, kids can recognize that there's an injustice and that it should be corrected. And as adults, regardless of our upbringing and the various circumstances that have affected our lives, nearly all of us have this idea that we need to be fair to one another. Now, in a positive sense, this means that if someone helps you out, does something really nice for you, that you should try to repay that. Someone gives you a generous gift, you say thank you. You repay them in kind. But even more than that, we understand this in a negative sense. That someone hurts you, well, you should hurt them back. They should pay for that. That's just fair. There is an adage in the Bible you're probably familiar with. It says, "An eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth." Now, while this may sound severe in the context of the time, what it does is it mitigates the amount of retribution you're allowed to give. If someone steals your goat, you can't go burn down their house. If someone strikes your brother, you can't go and murder their sister. But in pretty short order, eye for eye and tooth for tooth, in the words of Mahatma Gandhi, well, leaves the whole world blind. And little by little, the weight becomes too much for us to bear. Now, the scales may be balanced, but it's a heavy balance to carry. And that's where the idea of mercy comes in. People talk about forgiveness as a virtue. But if we think about it, we forgive somebody, what we're really saying is, well, take this off the scales. I'm no longer holding that against you. Take this off the scales. I'm no longer holding it against you. But should some things be forgiven? Are there some acts that are too heinous, too horrible, too severe, too damaging, too unforgivable? How many times must we forgive? Especially when we haven't done anything wrong. And so often we find ourselves like that. We perceive that the scales are balanced to one side, against us. And maybe sometimes we're right. Maybe sometimes we've been hurt. And that we have been the victims of other people's actions. How do we forgive them? Did they even deserve forgiveness? In yesterday's video, I spoke about the question, how good is good enough? Because the truth is that all of us fall short. The truth is that all of us, at some time or another, have added to the scale and have not always made amends for the things that we've done. By the things that we have done or the things that we failed to do. We've tipped the scales of justice. So what do we do about that? How do we fix it? I suppose we could seek justice for every single injustice. But the scales get really heavy. And I suppose we can forgive and forget and try to live mercifully, but that just doesn't seem fair. Especially when the scales are so slanted on one side. So, which do we pick? Justice or mercy?